The Global Briefing on SAfm.
Well, let's get into the global briefing this morning, 22 after 6. Russia is turning up the heat. Moscow's foreign intelligence chief is now accusing NATO of preparing for a large-scale conflict in Eastern Europe, just hours after EU foreign ministers met in Cyprus. Dr. Joan Swart is a researcher in military science at the University of Stellenbosch. Dr. Swart, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning. So already, of course, this meeting in Cyprus of EU ministers has been raising questions about what they're likely to achieve. But it seems that Russia is really looking at it as some form of genuine escalation. How seriously should we be taking this warning?
Good morning, Cathy. It's great to be here. And I can just say your guest yesterday covered the EU discussions in Cyprus quite well from an EU perspective. So permit me to have a look at it from Russia's perspective of their national security. So the comments, as we've seen, there's been ongoing NATO build-up since about 2014, I would say, but especially since 2022. And this include the Baltic regions, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, then Poland, Finland, joining NATO quite recently. And they have, of course, a 1,300-kilometer border with Russia. And then Russia also points out quite correctly that they've endured quite a number of long-range strikes and operations inside their territory. And they argue that it could not occur without at least indirect NATO support, which would include intelligence sharing, training, technical assistance, and so on. And connected to that, Putin is under increasing internal pressure to bring the Ukraine conflict to a decisive end. So this is quite telling. It's not surprising at all to me. Both sides, of course, argue that their measures are purely defensive and deterrence orientated. But in terms of Europe, it's clear that they are increasingly reorganizing itself around a long-term confrontation rather than a post-Cold War integration. So they, like many big countries or power countries in the world, they kind of need a common enemy. And so for NATO to survive, they actually need to make Russia the main enemy.
Mm. Let's look at Panama now. We're seeing the introduction of tough new laws on multinationals, and we know that it's a very important trade canal there. What is likely to be the implication of all of this?
Yeah, I see this as yet another spillover from the Iran conflict. There are two sides to this. For Panama, their sovereignty over the canal is not just economic, it's also deeply tied to their historical memory and their national identity and the legacy that they have of foreign intervention. So in other words, if you can think back a little bit, they had an invasion to remove Noriega in 1998, invasion by the US. And that still shapes how Panama approaches foreign influence. Um, and also, I mentioned the Iran war. It makes states rethink the levers that they have to reinforce their sovereignty. And the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's influence over that brought a new reference point to the picture. So we know we've got a couple of very critical global trade choke points. Panama Canal is one. Strait of Hormuz, I mentioned. Then the Suez Canal, Bab el Mandeb, and the Red Sea, and the Malacca Strait that we talked about a while ago. So there's been kind of movements and rumors and so on around all of these in terms of the countries who border these choke points to exert more influence over them.
Uh, Dr. Joan, all of this in the midst of us getting an increase in interest rates, it doesn't bode well at all. It does not bode well at all. Very
No.
briefly then, let's look at Bangladesh. And it's, again, countries feeling the impact, right, of the economic squeeze. They're now in talks with the IMF. This is for a $5.5 billion deal. How badly has this oil crisis hit Bangladesh?
Very, very badly. They are basically kind of the first domino to fall. And there's a couple also in precarious circumstances at the moment, like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and in Africa, Egypt, Kenya, Tunisia, Ethiopia. So, as you've mentioned or alluded to, they've experienced rising fuel costs, import bills, inflation, currency stress, and that they didn't start off before the war with a very stable economy. So that's been a problem. So they don't have that resilience that maybe we still have. And more importantly, we talk about rising fuel costs, but you must remember they are completely dependent on fuel coming out of the Gulf states, out of the Strait of Hormuz. So they basically haven't received anything and they've run out. So it's not only about rising fuel costs, there simply is no fuel. And as we all know, fuel drives the economy completely. So it's a dire crisis, and if it's not resolved in the next 30 or 60 days at the longest, then there'll be. They already talk about a contraction globally of between 30 and 36% of the global economy, which is worse than the
Sure.
1929 Great Depression.
Oh, Dr.
So
Joan
sorry to
Swart,
start
thank you.
off your
Bad
Friday
news
like
all
this.
round. Bad news all round. Dr. Joan Swart, researcher in military science at the University of Stellenbosch. And it's good to get that perspective, right? To know how other countries are being impacted. That, yes, we might be feeling the pinch, but, there are others who are worse off.